This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Hi, this is Eric Anderton, and welcome to this episode of Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. According to the United States Department of Commerce, only 30% of family businesses survive into the second generation. My interview this week is with Justin White, CEO of K&D Landscaping out of Watsonville, California. They are a commercial and residential landscaping contractor, and they create beautiful and functional outdoor living spaces. His parents started the business in 1986, and now he and his siblings, Shane and Kelsie, run the business. With the second generation at the helm, the business has grown from $1.5 million in 2011 to over $5 million today, and Justin has a goal of reaching $30 million with 300 employees by the year 2030. So in this episode, we're going to cover the time Justin was thinking about quitting his family business, how to balance control and leeway in a family business when transitioning between two generations, why Justin came into the business in the first place and how he fell in love with construction, how he gained the respect of the old school construction workers out in the field, how to handle working with siblings in a family business, particularly when you disagree, without coming to blows, and also presenting a united front to people in the organization despite any sort of disagreements or challenges you may have in your family relationships. And also we're going to cover Justin's vision for his 30-year legacy. This episode is brought to you today by Bulletproof Succession Assessment. So what will your legacy be? Are you ready to step away from your business? Do you have the next generation lined up, or are you stuck indefinitely? And do you sort of see yourself working until you're 70 years old without anyone to take your place? I've put together a little assessment that you should take to get some insights into where you are on your succession path. The assessment only takes about 5 minutes. If you go to my website, ericanderton.com/5, that's spelled F-I-V-E, and you'll be able to take there the Bulletproof Succession Assessment. And it'll give you some deep insights into where you are and perhaps a few thoughts about where you should go in terms of putting together your succession plan. So thanks very much to Justin for doing this interview with me. I really enjoyed our discussion. He's a dynamic young leader, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. Please share this podcast with other people. Please give us a review on iTunes. Please subscribe. And again, hey, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. It's my pleasure to welcome Justin White of K&D Landscaping to the show. Justin, thank you for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome, Eric. It's great to be with you today.
Now, I know that you have a family-owned and run business, and are you out of Watsonville there in California?
We are. Watsonville, California, just below Santa Cruz and right just out of the range of the Silicon Valley. Yeah, it's funny. I'm from the Bay Area, and I used to spend a lot of time in Santa Cruz. I remember one year I was bodyboarding in Santa Cruz. I fell off the top of a wave, and I broke my neck. Yeah, we get some good swell coming in here, especially in the wintertime.
Yeah, no, but thankfully it wasn't too bad of a break. But I had to quit rugby for a year or two because of that. But never mind. Yeah. Now, the thing that I'm fascinated in doing some research on your business is that you guys are a second generation family business, and so we're going to really dive into that today. I'd like to begin by just asking you, tell me about a time when you were thinking, I'm done with this family business stuff. I'm going to quit and go do my own thing.
Well, tell you what, Eric, running a family-owned company, owned and operated, is a challenge in itself. I mean, I'm sure anyone out there running a company can attest to the challenges. So when you're with your family, there's more emotion in it. There's more challenges. So, one time, this was about 2015, 3 or 4 years ago, it was during the transition of my mom kind of leaving the company. I'm starting to take more of a leadership role. I brought on a business coach that really I connected with, and both my mom and dad, there was a lot of resistance to bringing on that coach. I think they kind of thought, hey, we've done it for 25 years. Why do we need this guy telling us what to do now? So it was a point of contention between us. And I was really convinced as a young entrepreneur and young executive that I needed someone in my corner, coach me on a weekly basis, keep me in line. And I knew as I stepped up to the CEO role, I was going to have less accountability. And so I needed someone to hold me accountable. That wasn't just in the organization. And that was a big point of contention. The investment in the coach and just the idea of bringing someone on really bothered my parents. And it was a point where I was like, okay, if you're not going to let me kind of do my thing as you're saying, hey, I want you to take this over, but I want to hold on to a big piece of it. I was getting ready to walk away and start my own venture. And it came down to some pretty heated board meetings and some late nights in the office. And, with the family, you kind of let your emotions go. When you're with
right.
your peers, you maybe you're a little more hesitant to share things, but with family, so, there's no holding back. And it was a point where I think we all were ready to give up and go in our own directions. My mom eventually said, hey, you know what? I've had enough. She decided that she wanted to go in a different direction. So it gave me the opportunity to buy in as she kind of got bought out. And we kind of went forward in a path where my dad basically said, hey, kid, here's the reins. I'm going to give you some leeway and, don't mess it up. And so it was a tough time, but I really got to thank both my parents for being humble and being open to the idea of letting their son take on the family company. And so it was a lot of contention, but once we got through that, things really opened up and started to move forward well for us.
What did you focus on as you were going through that contentious part of the transition? So there's the theory, I want my son to run the business, but then when it gets down to the son actually running the business, what did you focus on as the second generation to get through that? Yeah, well,
so there's a lot of change going on, and people are naturally resistant to change. So what I did was I really focused on what was the easy things I could do to show my dad. And at this point, my mom's out of the picture. So what can I show my dad that I'm worthy of his trust, that I'm worthy of him believing in me, taking it on to the next step and really, carrying on his legacy. So I started to prove myself on the battlefield, so to speak. Words only go so far.
Right.
So I brought on an account manager to manage all of our maintenance operations, which was something that was really we were struggling with managing that. So I went and hired a really well-rounded individual by the name of Jeff, and he's still with us, doing great today.
That's great.
So I decided that, I had to show him that I was capable of running this organization. So I started to make some moves. I hired, as my mom was doing the financials, I brought in a new CFO. And I felt if I could find and hire the best people, whether in the landscape industry, financial world, and I could bring these people in, that I could show him I can build a team around me. And that's really what I knew it was going to take. So I had to walk the walk. I had to bring on some really top level people, and I started to change things, one thing at a time. And we did a rebrand. We relaunched a website. We brought on a marketing company. We did all the necessary stuff to really push us forward. And as he started to see things gain momentum, and he started to see the profit go up and the revenue go up accordingly, he kind of was like, all right, I think this guy knows what he's doing. And he continued to step back year after year as I continued to succeed and show him that I wasn't just full of hot air, that I really could make this happen.
So that's interesting. So you focused on small steps, you focused on bringing in the right people, and you had that mindset of, I need to prove myself.
Yes, I was very much in that. I set goals. I set annual revenue goals, profitability goals, hiring goals. And I was clear about these goals with him. And he kind of got for laughing in my face at some of these goals I had. And they were ambitious. but I had a path that I was like, here's my goal and here's 12 steps on how I'm going to get there. And he's like, man, that's a lot of work, but go after it, you know?
So let me ask you this. How did you emotionally manage sort of the rejection almost of your parents in a certain way? What I mean by that is, not as a kid, but, rejecting your business ambitions or being skeptical of that. How did you handle that?
It was tough. I think they didn't necessarily reject, but they definitely pushed back.
Yeah.
While at the same time supported me 100%.
Interesting.
So it's hard to explain. I've seen a lot of second generation companies fail because the founder holds on too tightly and wants to micromanage every decision. So although I think my parents were skeptical, they still gave me leeway. And I think that was the key to the transition success, was they gave me enough rope to hang myself with. I just luckily didn't hang myself with it, so they gave me enough leeway. And it was definitely emotional and something I had to work through. One thing I fell back on was meditation and daily meditation. Every morning, every evening, I was very ritualistic about it. And I'd sit down 5 to 10 minutes and just release the stress. Yeah. Release the emotion. Put a smile on my face when I walked into the office, no matter how hard it was.
Interesting.
And approach it with a positive attitude.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you put in place for yourself a routine that would help you get in the right mindset so that you could show up on a daily basis in the office in a positive way.
Yes. And as we started to bring people on, I started to realize that how I showed up in the office dictated how the day went. So if I show up in a bad mood and I show up in a negative way because I'm having issues with my dad, the whole office feels it. It's a small office at this point. We have 5 people in the office, including my dad and myself. And so it was really important to me that I showed up professionally. I showed up in a positive way and ready to tackle the challenges of the day. And the whole family aspect and the emotional side, we tried to keep that out of the day-to-day runnings of the business.
Yeah. So let's go back in time a little bit. Yeah. Why did you decide to come into the business in the first place?
Great question. Growing up, I always had a love for tractors. I was operating tractors at 10, 11 years old. I was building motocross tracks for my buddies and stuff. And I always had a love for the outdoors. So it was just natural. During high school, my dad said, hey, I need more work. I need more labor. You want to work for me this summer. And so I think between sophomore and junior year was the first year I worked 3 solid months. And I fell in love with landscaping. Just the idea of taking this blank slate, someone's backyard, and turning it into a usable space.
Interesting.
And all the memories that are going to be created and the happiness that brings the family. I really connected with that. And I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to run my own company. I didn't know if my dad was ever going to let me run his company. So in the back of my head, I was like, hey, I'm going to do this and work with him. But, I'm prepared to start my own company. And luckily, I didn't have to do that. Luckily, he opened up the ownership side of things and I was able to come to the business. But it was a young age. I'd say I was 16, 17 when I decided that I wanted to be a landscaper and I wanted to follow.
It's interesting because what you brought up there was this idea of transformation. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because this year we did our front yard, dude, and that we had the crappiest front yard in the neighborhood. It's like park the cars on the dirt kind of front yard. And then, man, in 2 weeks, it was just completely transformed. So tell me about, it's interesting to me because, a lot of times people have different motivations for getting into entrepreneurship. But yours, it doesn't seem like it was foundationally about the money. It was more about that transformation. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think the transformation for me is something that drives me. I'm not necessarily money motivated. I got to turn a profit here as a business owner, but I really like the idea of taking something and making it better.
Right.
And when I can motivate a group of people to do that with me, it's ultimately inspiring and motivating. And so I think working with a team to accomplish that transformation, it kind of translated into the business world where now I'm working with a team of professionals and we're transforming a company. So I went from kind of like working on the landscaping and putting in trees and plants, and now I'm working on the business, building people, building leaders, and it all just ties together.
So let me ask you that, okay? Because there's a difference between a piece of dirt and a person.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So as you began to grow into the leadership role in the organization, what were some of the challenges that you came across in terms of shifting your mind from to that building people aspect of it?
Oof, huge mindset shift. Going from working in the business with my hands, getting dirty, operating tractors, and transitioning to now working with people's feelings, motivating them, and ultimately gaining their trust and their buy-in. It was a weird position to be in. I was in a position where I'm now managing some people who I grew up looking up to. Like, there's guys that have been with my dad since the early 90s.
Uh-huh.
And they've seen me grow up. They're kind of part of our family. And now I'm in charge of them. And I have to gain their respect and gain their buy-in as a professional now.
So let me ask you that. Because it's a classic story in family businesses, the second generation comes in. What did you focus on in order to gain the respect and the buy-in of the old school people that you would eventually be leading?
I had to know my shit.
There you go. Right on.
I had to know what I was talking about. I could not BS these guys. And so it started first in the field. And I knew that if I was going to be a successful business owner and transition and take over my dad's company, I had to first prove that I could work side by side with these guys day in and day out. And my dad knew that too. And that's why he put me in the trenches for 4 or 5 years. I worked from a laborer to a foreman, side by side, laying brick, laying stone with these guys. And that's how I initially gained their respect.
How did you stay patient? Because I know, when we're young, patience is not part of our makeup. How did you stay patient in that 4 or 5 years?
I think it was foundational for me. I grew up baseball. I grew up basketball, racing dirt bikes. And then I also did 4-H from 8 years old to 17. And raising animals, and I grew up on a farm. Before I went to school, I was milking 2 or 3 goats, feeding all the horses at 5 a.m. and that since I was like 9 or 10, I was doing that. So I think it started early. My parents really started early on me that, hey, if you want to get ahead in this life, you really have to have a strong work ethic. And so that was just kind of natural for me. That it was getting up at the break of dawn, showing up at 5:30, working a 10-hour day, physical day. That was rewarding to me. So I knew it was part of the path. Not gonna, sugarcoat it. There was many days that I was digging ditches, and I just would see my dad drive up to the job site, look over in his truck and say, "Okay, guys, keep it going." And I was like, "Man, I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy." And but the patience was tough. It was. I think I fell back on those early fundamentals that my parents taught me to keep me kind of going through that tougher part to get me ultimately to where I am today.
So think about a time where you'd stepped into a leadership role and you had either a confrontation or a challenge with one of those people who you've been coming up through the field with. How did you handle that as you got into those leadership roles? Oh,
I remember the first time very distinctly. It was a large project. We were running a little bit behind on it, and I was put in charge of it. And I was put in charge above our most senior guy in the company. So I came in. I'm at this point, I'm 21, 22 years old, and these guys are in their 30s and 40s. And my dad says, "You're in charge. Finish this job." And I remember I was in the trailer on the job site with my hard hat on, and I was just shaking my head, looking down the ground. In tears. I was in tears thinking, how am I going to get this job done? I was under so much stress, and it was a breaking point for me where I pulled it together, and there was an individual on that job site from a different trade. He was the grading guy, Gary. He was like 65 years old. Kind of took me under his wing and said, and told me, hey, you're never going to get anything out of this business that you don't put in. So I know it's hard, but you got to get your shit together. You got to get out there and you got to get this job done. And so I went out and I started, said, here, this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. And things started coming together, and we finished that job. And when we finished that job and things came together, I definitely gained the respect of that individual. His name's Eduardo, and he's one of my close friends and a close colleague today. And that was about 7 years ago. And that was a tough point when I was really put into a leadership role. And I tell you, my dad, I think he tested me in that point. He said, hey, let's see what this kid's made of. And yeah, it was tough.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So as you're in the position that you're in now, you guys are revenue wise, you're at about, what is it? 5 million?
We're about 7.5.
7.5. Right on. Okay. And you've grown quite rapidly over the past few years here.
Yep.
As you look to the future, what are your goals for the future, and how do you think you're going to get there?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in setting goals, and we do this quarterly, and we look at our goals. We initially set a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah, right on.
In 2015, and the goal was by 2030, we wanted to be a $30 million company with 300 employees.
30 million with 300 employees.
Yep, that's our big milestone. That's our Mount Everest.
Right.
And we got 11 years to do so.
Yep.
So that was we were at about 2 million at that point. So that was a huge deal. And so we went from 2 million, we went to 4 million, we went from 4 to 5.5, and then we went from 5.5 to 7.5. So we've basically doubled twice over the last 3 years. Our next step is 2020, which our goal is to crest the $10 million mark. Our goal is to acquire a company in the South Bay area.
Okay.
Stretch out our operations, start another branch there.
Yep.
Our next goal after that is the 2030 goal. And so
let me ask you, in light of the 2020, sounds like acquisition is part of the strategy. What do you need to do differently in order to achieve that goal, in comparison to what you're doing now? What's your mindset there as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, great question. Well, I'm a big believer in what got you here won't get you there.
That's right.
So you got to think differently. The main focus for us, we're internally focused is what I like to say. We're focused on developing our talent. We're focused on recruiting the best people. We're focused on putting the right people in the right places. We have a really clear strategy, but our strategy is internally focused, where I think a lot of companies make a mistake and they think about the market, they think about other competitors. Like, I really don't care what my competitors do. I can care less. I'm focused on developing the absolute best team that I possibly can. And I know by doing that, we are going to get to that 10, that 12, that $15 million mark. And I say we're going to have to do another transition at that mark, 10 to 15, because I think at that point we will need to start looking externally, looking at market conditions, and really starting to try to own the word landscaping in our industry.
Interesting. Okay, so let me just summarize that. Then the 3 points, that internal focus is very interesting because it is tempting just to stay external. But developing your people, recruiting the best people, and then putting the right people in the right positions in the organization.
Yep.
Yeah,
if you do those 3 things, sales, marketing, revenue, profitability, everything comes in after that.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I think our biggest differentiation factor is our people, and I think it always will be our people. I think that's the one thing our competition can't duplicate.
So then, just a little more conversation around working. We've talked about working with your parents. I know you have a couple of siblings in the business.
Yep.
I got a bunch of kids, and I know that they spend 80 or 90% of their time fighting. So how do you? I know you're older than my kids are, but how have you handled? How have you worked through the challenges of sibling dynamic?
Yeah. Oh, and it is a challenge. So, little lay of the land. I'm the oldest. I'm 29. My brother's he's in the middle. He's 27. and I got a baby sister who's 25. So we're all pretty tight. We're actually all really tight. And my brother and I have complete opposite ways of dealing with pretty much everything. We're on the opposite end of the spectrum, and it is, I wouldn't have it any other way. We balance each other out, but one of the biggest challenges is public, like, what can I say? It's being aligned in front of our team, because we have such a tendency to butt heads, and like whatever he says, I want to one up, and whatever I say, he wants to one up. And so when we bring new ideas to the team, we have a tendency to argue with each other and kind of pick out why that idea isn't going to work. So we really have to consciously meet ahead of time and say, hey, this is an idea I'm pitching to the team. What do you think? And he goes, oh, it's a horrible idea. It's never going to work. And I say, okay, well, just humor me and just kind of like, don't beat me up too hard in the staff meeting. And so we kind of have to talk, and we have to really be aligned, because I think when you are polarized and you have two siblings, maybe two brothers or two sister and brother that are at the top of an organization, and they're constantly at a disagreement publicly, your team is forced to pick sides. And that's the last place you want to put your team in. So, the challenge is just being on the same page. And we have a tendency, natural, instinctual tendency to disagree.
Right.
So that's something that we both are currently working on. And then it's a lot of talking. So I'll pull him aside and say, hey, like, I can see that we're a little bit at a disagreement here, or I can hear it in the tone of your voice. You're not happy. What's going on? What's weighting you down? And we really try to keep an open dialogue. And I got to give a lot of credit to my business coach, Jonathan.
Uh-huh.
He plays a wonderful mitigator between us.
Yep.
And we'll get into some situations where we'll just be like, all right, we're calling Jonathan. And we call him up, and he's there for us. And we'll say, we'll talk to him for 20, 30 minutes. And at the end of it, we're like hugging each other, sometime emotionally hugging, we're just like, all right, let's keep doing this. Like, we get too caught up in the day to day. So
it's interesting, because it sounds like it's interesting that you're having to constantly communicate, and then you're making sure that you do your best to be in alignment in private before you present that public face to the organization.
Yep. I've seen a lot of situations go the opposite way, where you have two brothers and they are totally on different pages, and they're fighting, and the office environment is really, it's negative. You can cut the tension with a knife. And so we've really made a conscious effort to not let it get to that point.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So then, as we wrap up the interview here, give me 3 words of advice for someone who is a second generation person who is entering the business or is thinking about getting into the business with their family.
So for someone that's coming in, the second generation person, some things I would say is, first off, you got to be patient. You have to be patient, because you will want to move faster than your parents. It's just natural. Us as young technology-based kids, we want to move, change. So understanding that change takes time and change is overwhelming, and to be patient. That's, I think, number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, find mentors and just know that you don't know really anything. Like, be super humble and just say, you know what, like, I may think I got it figured out and I have a perfect plan, but at the end of the day, that's the tip of the iceberg, and I have 99% of my knowledge is yet to be developed.
Interesting.
Just be humble and understand that you really don't know anything.
Right on.
Even if you think you do. So, calm the ego down. And the third is really set goals for yourself and your team, and and for your family, and make sure that you all are on the same page. I think a lot of times you all assume you're on the same page, but when you ask each person what's their goal in 3 years, and you draw like a graph, everyone's going to be all over the place. So it's important to communicate and set goals as a family, to make, really clear what the expectation is. Because a lot of times you set out to take over a company and you may be thinking, hey, I want to be CEO or president in 2 years. And your dad's thinking, or your mom's thinking, I'm not letting this thing go for 10.
Yeah, there you go.
And you never talk. So set clear goals, talk to each other.
Okay, so that's interesting. So there's that piece of setting the clear goals, but then the other piece in there is communicating so that you're on the same page, particularly in light of transition timelines and things like that.
Huge. Very, very important.
Excellent. Okay, just wrapping up the interview here. Justin, I've really appreciated the insights here. As you're focusing on growing your business and working with your siblings, if you could wave a magic wand and, you're only 29, so let's say 30 years from now, as you're thinking about retiring or something like that, what would you want your legacy to be?
My goal is to have a family of companies, a dozen or so. I would love to have an umbrella of companies that can be ran by all the great people that have helped me get to this point. Just, everyday people that really do have the skills to run a company, but they just don't have the opportunity. So, I want to grow like a family of small to medium-sized companies and just put the everyday guy in charge and grow that. The next, I would love to give. I'm a big, volunteer guy. I love being involved with the community. I love to develop some type of, event space or an outdoor, like a baseball field or something to get kids outdoors.
Right on.
And some type of facility for that, because I think we're losing green space, more city, more concrete. So I'd love to designate an area that's just for having fun and being active.
That's excellent. So it's interesting how your business endeavors could drive that, because that event space, that's a few $1 million right there. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So that's excellent. Okay, that's great. Okay, so then just as we wrap up, I like to ask all my guests this: what's your favorite restaurant, Justin?
My favorite restaurant, I am going to go with Cafe Cruz in
Cafe Cruz.
Cafe Cruz. It's a great Italian spot. If you're ever in the area of Santa Cruz, it's a must stop. Okay,
great. Cafe Cruz in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, there it is.
Awesome. Justin, I really, really appreciate your time. I think we've got some great takeaways for the audience here. And again, I wish you all the best success and good luck as you continue to butt heads productively with your brother.
Yeah, sounds great, Eric.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity, and to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.